It is an honor to have you, Sunitha. Thank you so much, and many, many congratulations on I Am What I Am. Brilliant book. Loved every bit of it. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you like the book.
Oh, absolutely. And there are many, many reasons, and we'll get into each one of them. But I have to start with also saying that before I heard you on YouTube, your TED Talk, and I first read the book, and without any inkling of what you sound like, and I was a little intimidated, and here's why. Let me just give you one or two lines here. Bear with me. You're right. I speak with a certain authority, and I don't beat about the bush. I know my work, and I can back up claims with facts. My confidence is hard to digest for some, which means I am often painted as an anti-establishment, and both Prajwala and I are sidelined, etc., etc. For a moment, I thought, man, this is like a strict teacher that I will be talking to. And somewhere else, you also write, anger is my constant companion. Should I be afraid today?
Abhishek, I'm all of that. No denial. But I'm also more than that. So, if it depends on who you are and who is facing me at what time.
Right.
So based on who you are, I think my different avatars comes out. So my multiple avatars from the demon to the Devi will come out. And definitely after 30 years in the space, the Devi avatar is more confident with the knowledge that I know what I'm doing. I have learned from my mistakes. I know what I have, the number of times I've stumbled, perhaps on the right path. May not be the path, but one of the right paths. So that confidence also gives you a certain amount of, I would say, confidence, not overconfidence, but confidence, which is slightly intimidating for people who may be slightly, do I know the subject correctly or not? I know it because I've lived it.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that shines through the book is if it were written by it's like this. They say that in journalism, but they say on ground reporting is important rather than sitting behind a cubicle and just making something up without actually living there. And one of the refrains in your book is whether it is to help women sell dolls. In one of your previous avatars, when you had just started out, you went on in the market to understand how without the middleman, doing it yourself, going out on the field, seeing what a brothel is like. So all of those things are written. All of that is covered in the book, and it's got anecdotes among other things. And that's what, and it also gives the other avatar. You talked about avatars. One of the avatars that I enjoyed reading a bit, and you haven't given away too much of it. How was it growing up in school? What are the things that you enjoyed? You write about singing, dancing, elocution, poetry recitation as well. So what do you remember of your school days?
So I think, Abhishek, what makes me kind of slightly different is the fact that from, I think, very early, I knew that I was different. So there's nothing childish about me from the word go. So this thing called as childhood that you call, I think I did not experience that. I was never a child. I was born like an adult and I behaved like an adult. And so much so that when I was 5, 6 years old, meaning the furthest that I can remember very clearly, I remember many of my relatives calling me that she speaks like a grandmother. I was very, very clear on what's right, what's wrong, what's not done, what's done. But I also was very clear that I'm not going to be spending time running around playing and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And all that stuff. My whole orientation from very early age, and perhaps because I was physically slightly challenged, I couldn't walk, my leg was plastered and things like that. Maybe several factors played that I preferred to be sitting rather than doing all these antiques and all. And I never played with dolls, balls, or anything. So instead, I would teach children. I would teach children what I learned in school. So my dad had given me a slate and I would write on that. The other very different angle about me was I was very devoted to the so-called gods, very ritualistic. I would okay, and put one vibhuti from here to here, and
Right.
a whole lot of. I've grown out of that. Not my connection with my gods, though, but the external paraphernalia of making people believe that you're into a big time spiritual communion with yourself. So I
Right.
think that was something which was very strong. Apart from that, the fact that I could passively sing and kind of chalega dance, whatever I knew, Abhishek, I leveraged it to the fullest. Meaning I might be just a one-eyed king in the country of blind. Meaning maybe I could put 4 steps. Not that I was a great dancer, but that 4 steps I knew I would put it very nicely. And I would
Hmm.
teach those 4 steps to 4 other people. And then I will choreograph and then I'll creatively think, how can these 4 steps be manipulated? What people wouldn't realize is that I'm doing all this within that 4 steps that I know.
Ah, okay.
But I've not even gone to the fifth step because I don't know the fifth step.
Right,
But the
right.
very fact that I would use those 4 steps for somebody else, and again, my choices were very clear. My positioning was very clear. So very early in my age, I said, the mentally challenged children could be my direction. So I
Hmm.
would teach them the song. So I will teach them
Right.
the dance. So then what happens is, the child,
Mhm.
everybody looks at you differently. Oh, the child is going to that home for children. She's doing all the social work. She's constantly teaching other children who don't. So I am like the de facto teacher. So obviously I'm a high achiever. And for me, somewhere I think I had this kind of obsession
Mhm.
that whatever I do, I need to do my best in it. There's no half measures. And I would think it's my personal humiliation if somebody had to ask me to do something.
Mm.
Like, if somebody says, improve on this, I would take it not nicely. In
Hmm.
my mind, I should be doing everything. Nobody
Right.
should be even prodded to tell me, hey, why don't you improve on this? Whatever I know, whatever I do
Hmm.
it with devotion. That's the best word that I can say. So, what
Yeah.
happened then was, a very serious child, a child who had too much of knowledge. And
Mhm.
not that I was very intelligent, huh? Not at all intelligent. I don't think I was intellectually bright and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But I would get the first rank.
Wow. Right.
Mug it,
Okay.
do it, whatever. If
Yeah.
you're going to ask me my 10th standard chapters, I don't remember any of that. But
Yeah.
whatever I do, I give my foot to it. And what I can't, I knew that I can't. And I will
Hmm.
own it and I will be very clear. So, that kind of, weird kind of maturity at that age did not seem quite okay with people around me. So I
I
got
can understand. Yeah.
I typecasted as a very, different child.
And how did you deal with that? Did you care at all, or did you?
I
I
did
mean, was
not
it a
care at
niggle?
all. There was so much, so many things were happening
Hmm.
around me, Abhishek. And you're constantly busy. Like you're going to school, you're excelling in all the co-curriculars, not sports.
Mhm.
But so this is how I understood myself so early in life. I knew I can't do well in sports at all. So I didn't go that side at all.
Right.
I made some feeble attempts in learning yoga and all, but that's for the grades that I have to get. In the
Hmm.
central schools, you have ABCD grade for your yoga and games and all
Mhm.
that stuff. So to pass that, whatever is necessary, I would do. But otherwise, if I knew that I had a good handwriting, then it was important for me to get the first prize in handwriting, whatever. So
Hmm.
one got caught up in doing every. So when you're putting efforts to improve yourself, not because you're endowed with those quality, gifts that you're
Right.
not like, you can't like very intellectually bright child, maybe,
Hmm.
once they read it, they will get it all like this. I didn't have that. I'll have to read it 10 times, but I will do that
But
10
you will do
times.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what happened is, and after that, going and doing dancing with, intellectually challenged children, and so then your time is completely
Hmm.
blocked, chock blocked. So where is the question of having any, free time for anything else,
Yeah. Yeah.
or to listen to what people are talking about?
Yes.
Not
Got
that I
it.
was not aware. There was the bunch of the world who loved me. My
Mhm.
teachers, I was the favorite for several because children are so carrying the notebook, studying, being the good girl, doing everything nice. Everybody
Right.
normally likes you. Then there are also many people who didn't like me, especially the other children,
Hmm.
because it's like, okay, parents are constantly comparing, look at Sunitha, look at you, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. Within the family also, within my other siblings also. So there's a lot of sibling rivalry and all the rest of it happened. And I was too preoccupied with myself, I would say, to even bother to know what the
What
the
others
world
are
outside is
side is.
thinking about me.
And you knew quite early, as you are saying, that you wanted to take the path that you did, and your father was transferred to Vizag when you were in sixth grade or sixth
Yeah,
standard.
yeah, yeah,
And that's where, and I quote from your book, you said, I wanted to work with the disadvantaged. So by then you had made up your mind that
yeah.
this is the route that I want to take.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that route for me was set, I think, much,
Hmm.
much before that. Articulation came maybe when I was in
Ah,
sixth. But I think even as early as 3 years old, my direction in life was very clear.
right. Wow.
So my early childhood conversations with my grandmother or my uncles or
Hmm.
anything, what do you want to become? This is a favorite question that everybody asks. What will you become
Yes.
when you become older? So,
Yeah.
serving was it. That's it.
And where did that come from? Was it your parents? Was it, or
Nowhere.
how did that? Oh, okay.
Very interestingly, Abhishek,
Hmm.
in the 100 generations before us, and
Hmm.
perhaps the 100 generations after me, we don't have any work persons who have even the biggest orientation to social work.
Hmm.
Because my parents come from a lower middle class family. My father was a first generation learner, and many of my cousins are drivers, cleaners, and lorry cleaners and things like that on
Hmm.
my father's side.
Right.
There are many of them who are educated too. Their entire perception about the world and about themselves was very limited.
Hmm.
Study, get a job.
Right.
That's it. So we are here and we have to move up here. So we did not have a house. Now let's have a house. These are the only aspiration that my entire family. So for my parents, especially my father-in-law, he could not even fathom
Hmm.
or understand what I was up to. All
Right.
that he knew is it is me and I'll be only doing it right. That's a kind of an
Hmm.
unconditional, non-judgmental space that my parents brought me up. My mom, I must say, definitely, I don't think she was into social work or anything, but a woman of extraordinary generosity. We never had enough to eat, but, whatever we had, she would have enough to give to others.
Hmm.
Whether it is clothes, whether it is food, she had absolutely, and somehow her traits have come into me. I have absolutely no qualms just taking and giving anything from them. I
Right.
have no problem at all. In fact, I'm scared to own things. Whatever I have, happy to share. And that's, I think, a quality that I got from my mom.
There is a little anecdote where clothes, she would stitch your clothes and then
Yeah,
she
yeah.
would give them off despite you
all
not
all
having.
all yeah, all my cousins, because my father would come to Kerala. We would come there once in 4 years when my father would get an LTC. That's the only way that he could afford bringing all of us together, by train. And when we
Right.
would come, she would come with loads of our clothes, and that many cousins and everybody would be there when all these clothes would be handed over. So my mom, she's called as Nalli Chechi. Chechi is elder sister. So, she would be, everybody in the village, everybody in the relatives would be waiting for her because she would bring so many things.
Like Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. She was the perpetual Santa Claus because, and even till date now, Abhishek,
Hmm.
you could be a stranger, you come home, she would not let you go, hot khali kind of thing.
Right.
She will
Right.
always send something with you, nothing else, or any snacks, everything would be packed and kept in a car,
Hmm.
or whatever is a lunch or dinner that is cooked, she will pack it in thing, and she will not allow
Right.
anybody to go
Empty
barehanded. So
handed. Yeah.
yeah, empty-handed. Not that I've got all the complete quality of that,
Hmm.
but the act of giving, you know, giving is a gift,
Hmm.
you know, giving it purely,
Right.
because you want to give, just that, no strings attached, no expectation that I'm giving you, so you will give me back. Nothing. Just give. That's a rare quality that my mom had, and
Hmm.
I would say a good amount of that I imbibed.
And while being brought up in that background where maybe you had to be frugal, money may not be on tap as it was for your peers in
Yeah.
St. Joseph, was it? When
Yeah.
you did your higher education, was there a bit of a culture shock there when you went there to see people
Yeah.
around you?
So, what happened is two, three things, when I was
Hmm.
in center school, there was a mild setback getting admission into the center school. So, before I got into center school, I was for 1 or 2 years in a convent school. So my English was in the first round of my
Hmm.
life at the age of 5 and 6. My English was very good. So when we reached, Bhutan, and I had to get into a center school, I got zero in Hindi.
Hmm.
Exactly zero.
Wow.
Like, so that was something. My father, took great pride in the fact that he had done his Prathama, Madhyama, and all that stuff in the Hindi
Right.
southern states to promote Hindi. A lot of programs were done, and he writes beautiful Hindi, and he may not speak beautiful Hindi, but
Hmm.
he would write beautiful Hindi. So I was his pet.
Hmm.
So he kind of thought that anything that he was, I would be. So when I got a zero, while he said things from his mouth, like you can learn this and all the rest of it. But in his eyes, there was so much of disappointment. And that hurt me so much and so much. I can't tell you, Abhishek, that I kind of decided I'm going to master the stamp language.
Right.
So
Okay.
then from, I think, my third standard, I started mastering Hindi. And like anything that I do it with
Right.
total devotion. I did it in such a way that Hindi elocution number one, Hindi speech number one, Hindi skit number one, Hindi poem writing number one. So everything damn Hindi is I'm the Pandit for it kind of thing. So
Wow.
much so that I could only speak Hindi finally. I forgot my
Hmm.
English.
Right.
I would
Okay.
write English. I would, fare very
Hmm.
well in my English exams, but I never practiced English. I could never speak English, and so when I came to Joseph's, it was a big culture shock because everybody spoke English.
Hmm.
Number one. Number two, I think they were also, this was the first time without uniform. So long as you're in uniform, you don't
Right.
realize how many clothes you have or you don't have,
Yes.
you know, because
Yes.
you can work with 3 pairs or 4 pairs of uniform and very happily move about it. But when we came to college the first time, you needed clothes, say 6 days a week to wear,
Hmm.
all casual clothes and people around me. And Joseph's is such a place that you had the super elite and the normal class too. So I would see all of them around me. Their clothes intimidated me, their hairstyles intimidated me, their world vision intimidated me. And I remember those first few days when one of my classmates came looking tired, and she said, I'm just coming after my horse riding. And I said, oh God. Meaning, I've never known anybody doing horse riding, leave alone seeing a horse close by. So all that
Right.
is only movie matters, no? So
Yeah.
I think, so that caused definitely a culture shock, but
Hmm.
a good culture shock.
Culture shock.
Slowly I
Yeah.
learned to cope up with that. And of course, for the first few years, you will search anywhere, your own ghetto you will create. So I
Right.
searched for
Yeah.
fellow setter school students who always spoke Hindi
Yes.
and then made one gang of them. And
Excellent.
again, we were happy with that. So
It, it,
even
it,
in my college, I refused to learn English. I rather speak too much of English. It's only in
it
my master's that I started
masters.
speaking English.
Ah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a story that my mom tells me. We are also from, a middle class background, and she happened to get a scholarship at Wilson College here in Mumbai back in the day. And she would find students around her having sandwich and with jam and bread, and they would eat in a particular way. And here she was with, in Marathi, they say, gul chapati, means you've got jaggery and
Yeah.
chapati. And then she would pretend to eat as if it was an elite, pastry of sorts. And because you had to be with, you had to, and the peer pressure at that age, whether you like it or not, seems to be there because you're teens, for that matter. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. So horse riding lessons is another level altogether, I have
Yeah,
to
completely,
confess.
completely. Yeah. So, sometimes these kind of things, people, um, we don't realize, but then, so many things you observe around you, and then uh, you feel like a misfit in several
Hmm.
spaces. So the survival instinct is automatically moved to safe zones and
Hmm.
try,
Right.
setting up there, because somewhere I had this feeling, Abhishek, that I don't want to be swallowed by anybody. That was very clear
Hmm.
for me. I
Yeah.
didn't want to be. I'm not very good in imitation, and I didn't want to be. I'm not in the need for everybody to accept me. I had this
Right.
very arrogant thinking way back then, and now too. What you think about me is your problem.
Hmm.
You know, what I think about myself is my problem.
There is a
You know,
line on a T-shirt that I read. I don't have an attitude problem. You have a perception problem.
yeah.
Some such.
I completely hear that and endorse that. Yes, yes.
And I also liked that you were, you came across as human somewhere in the first few pages where you talk about your,
I'm still human in the entire book.
to
Don't get
me,
me
because as
something
a,
else.
yeah, where one of the biggest nightmares that a kid can have of any age growing up is parents finding out that he or she has started to experiment with smoking. And
Yeah.
you had your own shed, didn't you?
Again, that was not connected to,
Yeah.
a childhood or a
Hmm.
teenage. I was already an adult and
Yeah.
I had joined this organization, and they sent me for exposure to another part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trailing and tracking the Gujars from Saharanpur to Jammu. They walk, they're shepherds.
Right.
And they would walk in very cold climate, and all of them will be holding the BD and smoking.
Right.
So men, women, children, everybody. And then,
Yeah.
I like the way they held the BD.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
holding was, I don't know, there was a
Mm-hmm.
kick just
Yes.
seeing them. And then, okay, for the few days that I was there, I picked up, and there I wanted to be integrated into that system because I
Yeah.
wanted to understand them better. I didn't want to look like a sore thumb, outside
Hmm.
it. So I
Yeah.
would practically imitate exactly like them, and I liked the feel, the power that I felt. Oh my God. What I forgot is to remove them and throw it away before I came back to Bangalore where my parents live. So
Right.
imagine the shock. But to their credit, Abhishek, they never asked me. It's just that my mom kept a vulture's eye on me, thinking, when is she going to catch me red handed? I know
Right.
I never had any craze for anything, either
Hmm.
alcohol or cigarettes or BD. Just that one
Yeah.
dikhawa and nice stunt.
Lovely. And was this the time when you were as an intern at Samvada? Am I
Samvada,
get?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And 28th October 1996. Does that hold a particular significance in your life? What happened that day?
So, there are several significant happenings,
Yeah.
and one of them is that the 28th of October 1996, when all my fantasies came true and I got arrested. And I was living in some kind of I think, a delusional space where when you read so much of Mahatma Gandhi, freedom fight, and
Hmm.
everything, then somewhere in your mind, if you have to be, recognized as an activist and you are respected as an activist, एक time to jail जाना बनता है यार,
Banta.
that kind of thing. And so the idea that, okay, now if you do a protest, you might be arrested. What was not planned, perhaps, was that what was not emotionally and mentally prepared for was what the narrative given to us was different. The narrative given to me by the organization who was organizing the protest was that you will get arrested, you should court arrest,
Hmm.
not get arrested, you have to court arrest.
What
So
is
after
that?
you
How does
court
that work?
means you ask yourself to be arrested. No,
All right.
you can also run away now.
Hmm.
Meaning there is a crowd and there is a mob, you can just slip away. For me, slipping away is very easy because I'm just 4'6", And that time, at least now I have
Hmm.
at least 50 kilos to stand by. But that time I was so puny and such a simple thing that I could just slip away. But the briefing given to us is we should court arrest. Getting arrested is the mark of resistance,
Hmm.
and there will be a lot of media coverage because you're getting arrested. And that's when we will say why we are opposing the Miss World pageant. And that's how we will get the hype. And then, station bail will just come out. It's just a
Right.
matter of going into the police station and coming. The first time things started kind of not going the way they had described to us uh, was when we never moved out of the station for the whole day.
Hmm.
And there was no lawyer who came there. And so one was wondering, "Ki, what the hell is happening?" And then evening at around 5-ish, they said, "Now we have to be produced for the court." Even then, one was not. So when you land up in things where you're betrayed
Hmm.
and you're given wrong information, that kind of gives you a big shock. So it's only when we reach the court and we stood before the honorable judge that this entire story unfolded like one nightmare around me. The people who were the organizers, till now they were fine and they were perfectly okay, they were happily sitting and suddenly became somebody else. They all sat and squatted on the floor, their legs right facing towards the judge, and they were screaming, and so much so that the judge had no choice but to get upset. So there was this clear cut contempt of court.
Hmm.
So we had to be remanded.
Right.
And that is when you started realizing that what was said is not what is planned. So was a conspiracy in terms of they had planned something else, told something else to us, and then even at any point of time, if they had taken us into confidence and said, "This is what we are planning and this is how we are hoping," I think the shock value would have been much much less. But the shock value became higher because
Hmm.
one had no clue what's going to happen next.
And how many days did you spend there? And how
Nearly
was that?
20 days. But I
Hmm.
think in retrospect, when I look back, Abhishek, I think it is one of the most profound, transformative periods in my life because today, the way I manage or the way I have set up my safe homes,
Hmm.
the way I run my shelter homes and protective homes. A large part of it comes from my experience living in the jail. I know
Right.
exactly what should not be there, exactly what should be nurtured. What is it that a person who has come out of slavery or come out of a situation which has been very exploited, what is that kind of an enabling therapeutic environment that we artificially create so that the person, if not immediately, but as soon as possible, starts feeling and cherishing
Hmm.
that, your dignity is upheld here. You're not going to be violated here. You're going to be respected here. And what you say mean a lot. We
Hmm.
care. We care for what's happening to your body, mind, and soul. So exactly what a jail does to you, exactly opposite to what a jail does to you. Jail takes away step by step every ounce of your self-respect,
Right.
and by the time you come out, you actually start loathing yourself.
Hmm.
I knew this is,
Not do. So that did not
I,
go waste. In fact, that
yeah.
helped you
Oh,
in
I
many
don't.
ways.
I don't think. I think that was my best PhD.
Right.
If you ask me what was my best
Hmm.
lesson in the University of Life, I
Hmm.
would say that one because see that molded today. If the organization that I founded, Prajwala, has a USP
Hmm.
of having the best therapeutic spaces in the world, I would thank Bangalore Central Jail for that
And
because
one lesson that I could extract from those paragraphs was that you would still spend 1 hour meditating there along with a few of your was that
yeah,
right, with some of
yeah,
the
yeah.
people there.
I taught them how to meditate. I would meditate. I would teach them how to meditate. And I spoke to the
Hmm.
jail warden and I asked her whether I could do some of this, and she said, "Please go ahead."
Go
And
ahead.
it was a time for me to also give back to the people inside that space. Incarceration, of any kind has its own impact on the mind. And that was my
Right.
first learning lessons because every girl, every child that I rescue,
Hmm.
when she comes into my shelter, feels she's being incarcerated,
Hmm.
So, and I know what exactly she feels because I felt that
Yeah. Right.
and
Right.
I have seen others around me who have committed a crime and have come and their perception about incarceration. So that couple of hours with other co prisoners under trials and convicts who were my, co-partners there in the prison,
Right.
was eye-opening in multiple ways. So uh, much grateful for
And you
that.
were just 24 at the time, and you also, that the therapeutic environment, I love the chapter about you moving into a slum, and the name, if I Munsan Nagar, is that right? Yeah, Musanagar, yeah. And it didn't matter where you lived, but it's about the people around you, and that also helped
Exactly.
you, did it?
Yeah. Yeah. See, when I chose to move to Hyderabad,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had no money in my hand. So then, I had contacted this friend of mine in Hyderabad.
Mm-hmm.
He was working in a slum and he said, okay, come. So then kind of it became practical. Let me stay here,
Right.
and I didn't come with any big, you know, philosophic thing. I want to experience poverty. It was just a practical choice that I made. But it was an interesting practical choice that I made because I had also taken up to spiritual, and as a celibate, I chose to be a celibate. So, in line with that thinking, it was very interesting to live with minimum, not
Right.
possess much, not have
Hmm.
much. Neither you had the money for having it. Meaning it's not like I had a choice that I could have stay in a villa, you know. I didn't have any other choice. So
Right.
this was the practical choice. But the practical choice was never a burden
Hmm.
because it became one of the most, I would say, one of the most beautiful experiences of my life because one one in the beginning I remember all the struggle to get water, and those are some small things for many people.
Hmm.
But just imagine the water comes at 3 in the morning. So at 3 in the morning you have to stand, and there's one big queue for the water,
Right.
and that is when you're struggling to survive with one pot of water, you know so that one pot of water can bring the choicest abuses from your mouth.
Hmm.
You become a demon or a monster because you stood there and somebody is trying to
Yeah.
come out of you. So
Yeah.
all your solve and sophistication and your manners and everything
Go out of the
goes
window.
shumantar, and you actually become very earthen and very
Hmm.
uh, I would say very earthy, and those were my first. Then for several reasons, because of the role I was playing in this organization, and by coincidence, again a lot of coincidence, that I ended up becoming very very important player with the district administration and the district collector. Suddenly I became a very important person in
What were you doing there for you to have those kinds of, quote
so the
unquote
very
connections, and
day.
what did you help them with?
So it started from day one. The
Hmm.
day I landed, that afternoon was a meeting with the district collector on the Pulse Polio program. So this was
Right.
December 4th of 96. And
Hmm.
December 6th is the Black Day, the Babri Masjid
Oh,
demolition day,
yes.
you know.
Yes.
So the Pulse Polio was scheduled for 6th of December, and I had landed on the 4th of December. And the
Hmm.
district collector, Mr. Banwarlal, had organized you know, interdepartmental and a convergence meeting with all stakeholders. So this organization was supposed to go, and he said, "Come along," and I went in.
Hmm.
And it's like, discussions were happening and who will go where to monitor the pulse polio program. And this is old city. And then everybody had this look. And I'm new to the game, so I had no idea what old city means. I had no clue that it's the old city where all the Muslims live.
Hmm.
And, it's the old city which actually does it as a black day on, so the entire, and usually there will be some communal rights or that on those days. So practically everybody was worried to
Hmm.
go to the old city. And I was so naive. I said, I'll go. Everybody took one double take. So I got not only my attendance in the convergence meeting, but, everybody noticed who's this new player now.
Hmm.
And so immediately, who are you? Who are you? Kind of stuff.
Right. Right. Right.
So that was the beginning of my
Hmm.
interaction. So I managed to get the attention of the district collector. And
Right.
again, my character is the same from my birth to now. I take up something, I do it with all my heart. So even the pulse polio, I did it with like so much of. So everything becomes noticed. But
Mm.
thereafter, the Nandanavanam beautification project was announced, and again we had to deal with the district administration. So it was easiest for me because now I was already,
Right.
known, for me to find out what exactly is this project. How is it
Mm.
going to affect the people? How many people are going to be evicted? What is the kind of evacuation that will happen on the riverbed? People would be removed. So then I became the person who started giving the information to the organization and the people. At the same time, also there's something else that happened was the Chandrababu Naidu's Janmabhoomi program. And Janmabhoomi program was a very interesting program, but through people's participation, the local community was being developed. So there was this unique component called as PVP, Prajala Vadaka Palana. So people will govern their own communities. Mr. Naidu, this was Mr. Naidu's pet project and he wanted it to succeed. So the first round, everybody, all stakeholders, civil society, district administration, everybody were fully put together. So we all formed groups like, revenue officials, the MRO, the RDO, so many
Mm.
district officials, and we are part of the same committee.
Right.
And we are now moving from one slum to another slum to another slum to check how this is happening. So what happens is your contacts are built.
Mm.
Now all these contacts became important for the slum that I was living, because I was connected. So anybody would ask anything, I knew the right person to connect. And suddenly my status was different there.
Mm.
I was a revered person, and the community considered it a great honor to feed me and take care of me. And
Right.
suddenly, that little beautiful place became my, I think, not even 5 feet, 4 feet by 4 feet room, became my palace.
And that's why you called yourself the queen there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Abhishek, that has been my experience throughout. I've never lacked anything. Never. It is rather funny because I chose to be a full-time volunteer. I've never taken a salary from my organization. My fetishes and all my, finicky needs, including diamond nose pins and everything has been fulfilled.
Except one small thing, I guess you had to get rid of your hair. Long hair is what you said, right? Was that? Oh, did
No,
that?
again, nothing.
Yeah.
No regrets
Hmm.
because I did
Yeah.
it three
Yeah.
times. I did not once, I did it 3 times. I did 3 times, and all the 3 times the same deity benefited. That's another part of the story.
Yeah. Right.
It's
Okay.
really Balaji who's benefiting from my generosity. But every time I cut,
Hmm.
I kind of realized that, one looks so glamorous without it. You know?
Right.
So in the last, I think, 10 years, people have seen me in all kinds of weird hairdos.
Yeah.
One more
And
stylish than the other.
yeah, and there's one thing I don't know how it is. I mean, my wife was telling me this when she chose to cut her hair. Some people say, "Did you ask your in-laws or your husband before cutting your hair?" It's a little sexist for people who make such comments as well, which is quite odd. I feel, but yeah, that's
Yeah,
just
but
the way it is.
Abhishek, I went through it. I went through it in a different way. For
Hmm.
some reason, my husband was more in love with my hair than in me. So I think he was more caught up with the beauty of my hair, which is very long, and
Yeah, yeah.
he was aghast.
Oh dear, my heart goes
He,
out to him.
oh my God, he was so unhappy. We had fights, and
Ooh, that was serious then. Oh, okay.
serious, meaning
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much so that he brought me to tears in terms of,
Hmm.
but I stood my ground. I said, I'm giving it. It's mine. Yeah, I don't care what you think. But then,
Hmm.
it was so sad to see him getting caught up with some bloody, bodily stuff. And, and there was no way I could even communicate anything to him because he wouldn't understand. He was raving and ranting and, you know, but once I shaved my head, and the first picture was taken by him, and then he looked and he says, "You actually look good." So it took him a little while to realize that you don't need to
Hmm.
have hair to look good. I think looking good is something that comes from inside you. It's
And
not something that comes outside.
indeed, and at that time you had a whole different set of priorities and multiple things to do. December
Yeah.
1996 is when you founded Prajwala. You named your
Yeah.
outfit Prajwala finally. How did you decide on the name, and what did you set out to achieve on that day? And now that so many years later, how much of it still holds?
I would say, somewhere one knew that it has to be something that's about not just light, but also the anger that I carry. And that is why the flame became very critical for me.
Hmm.
The jwala. See, there's something called a diya, the light. So it's just soft and nice.
Right.
I didn't want that soft and nice feeling.
Yeah.
I wanted a name that kind of resonates with the anger that I was feeling,
Hmm.
the anger and the injustice around sexual violence and sex trafficking and sex slavery. So I think that kind of was, getting boiled inside me, and that boiling inside me then came out like a volcano in the name of Prajwala. Um, but what stood then and what stands today, nothing has changed. It's the
Right.
anger that drove me to give the anger that I was expressing as a channel of proactive action,
Hmm.
and that is Prajwala. And today, if I am sustaining and this mission is sustaining, it is the same anger. So it's a jwala in, maybe it started with one and two people, and now it's more than 200 people. Same jwala. So nothing has changed.
Excellent. And on the first day, you were the first teacher because
I
it
was
was
the
just the
first
big,
many things.
you're the first many
I
things,
was the
obviously.
first teacher. I was the first sales girl for the organization. I was the first cook for the organization. I was also the first caretaker for the organization. So,
And
yeah.
to wear these many hats and to have different identities what suit you at that time. For example, my mom's a teacher, so I empathize with all teachers in the world because it's difficult to hold a kid's attention because of a million other things going in their heads. They are wired differently. How did you go about being patient while also balancing the fact that you can't be too hard on them because they may leave and you didn't want them to? Because that must have been a delicate balance. Would that, how did you manage that at the time?
Say it was a delicate balance at all, I don't think it was a delicate balance at all for me. For me, because my end goal was very clear in my mind. Now, these are the children that have to be removed, finished, period.
Right.
I have to do everything to ensure that they don't go back.
Mm.
So if I have to dance for them, I shall do that. If I have to sing with them, I can do that. I have to ensure that they're entertained,
Mm. Right.
throughout the day. And I had enough antics up my sleeves. I could entertain them very well.
Mm.
But I also knew after a while that I can't be doing this forever.
Yeah.
You know, there's only this much that I can do. And teaching as a profession full time would require far more
Mm.
thing. I can't claim to be that kind of a teacher. I was a part time. I knew I was a transitory bird. This will be just for a few days till I find
Yes.
the right person. So
Mm.
when your end is very clear, what do you want out of this?
Mm.
When your last point, where should all this reach is very clear, then nothing becomes a challenge, because then you're working from that point backwards, because you're saying, "Okay, how do I reach there?
And these kids, some of the text, sent a shiver. I read one part where a 7-year old tossed a 1 rupee coin because he has heard somebody else say that elsewhere and asking for oral sex from a 5-year old. How did you deal with such hard to understand things around you?
See, Abhishek, one is that I was very, very, very practical
Mm-hmm.
right from the word go in my life. And one of the most practical things that I did the day I decided that I wanted this as my life statement. This is what my every breath will be defined with. The first thing I decided then was to understand this problem. So I spent a lot of time observing. I would go into a brothel, I would go and stand there and observe what is happening. And that gave me a very, very, very good understanding of what this world means and what it means to be brought up in a world of this kind. If a human being has to be brought up where the mother is, having sex with a customer right on top of the bed and the child is right underneath, you know, or the child is constantly hearing, profanity of all kinds and, filthy words and whatever is the visual image around the child, it's about transactions, take money, put it in her blouse,
Hmm.
take inside the room. So this is all, and they have normalized that. So very early in my decision making, I'd already seen all this. So it was not shocking for me to see this. What was shocking is I didn't know what to do about it. See, having observed it, I knew this can happen.
Right.
And I
Right.
had a fairly good understanding. Okay, if somebody is brought up in this kind of an environment, this is how this person will behave.
Hmm.
But if I have to see, and that is the difference between you watching something, and from far away, like an observer watching and then understanding, great, like a journalist, for example,
Hmm.
you're watching it and then you understand it, no doubt about it. But now I'm in a situation where I'm saying my role is reversed. I'm not watching.
Right.
I have to be a player there. I have to react. I have to respond.
Hmm.
And I have to do something which will either go forward or take me backward. That how was what was, I would say, the most difficult part at that time, because having known case, so I didn't have any judgment against the child, why the child is doing that way. I was not shocked that the child spoke like that. Although the teachers whom I had hired were pretty shocked,
Hmm.
but I was not shocked. But I was taken aback on what am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to tell this child?
Right.
Did you say the right thing? Did you say the wrong thing? How am I supposed to say it?
Hmm.
How am I slowly also bring into conversation that, what you see in your family or where you go back home, what you hear,
Yeah.
those are not the appropriate stuff. How do
Hmm.
I start then engaging with the child in that? Those were skill areas. And that is when I realized while I thought that I was emotionally and mentally prepared for this field because I spent a couple of years understanding the field without doing anything big.
Hmm.
Again, skilling yourself to actually make the right responses is a different ballgame. And therefore, and a lot of my time in the initial years was learning. See, the moment I
Hmm.
understood that I don't have the skills,
Yeah.
then the understanding automatically also came that I have to learn the skills. And then also, when you did a recce around you, you did a kind of a quick Snapchat on, snap assessment around you. You didn't find anybody who was doing this to learn from them. So then you
Hmm.
started experimenting, try this, try that, try this, try that. And then finally some jugadu happens and you find that answer.
And this communication, how you communicate to the child is so important, isn't it? I think if I remember correctly, you say something like, what happened? If you ask this question to a kid, but if it's not done in a tone which is empathetic or friendly, the kid
Yeah,
might suddenly shut out and not respond.
exactly.
Small things like those.
Exactly, and especially when we are coming from another world vision, we are
Hmm.
coming from another, another perception about life. We have not experienced what they go through on a daily basis, and we come with our holy morals and all those stuff, and then any word can indicate that we are being moralistic
Hmm.
and the child may not like it. And we are not here at this time to make the child feel guilty about their mother or ashamed of the mother for that matter. How do you tell that what the mother is doing is not appropriate? So I've had many children, as they grew up, who said, मेरी मम्मी गंदी है क्या? And here is this woman who's staking her life to ensure that this child gets a good education. And here, slowly, the child starts disowning the mother and feels ashamed of the mother. So much so that I remember one child telling me when I put the child in a particular school, the child said, Madam, आप ही आना, मेरी मम्मी को बोलना नहीं आने के. So, so one has to be very careful. You know, what is your intention? Your intention is to remove the child from exploitation. Is your intention to belittle and shame the woman who is, just aspiring that her child gets a better life? You know, do you want a child to disown their parent or their mother, and feel ashamed of what has happened? So all these are multiple questions that comes into you, and all of that requires very mindful planning and thinking, which I must say, Abhishek, I did not learn it in a day. I took months and years to reach there. And I continue to learn. I can't say that I have all the answers.
And talking about the learning experience, the first international trip that you made to learn more about your, the entire industry and the NGOs, and how can we go about learning from other countries who are doing something similar, that was quite an eventful one, wasn't it, for you?
Absolutely. I think, that way, Abhishek, I think I've been very, very lucky because I got the right kind of exposure to meet extraordinary human beings who were also in their own spaces, experimenting things, and a lot of initial understanding um, uh, of how to go about things. There's no one single way of doing it. There are multiple ways of doing it. There are multiple strategies that can be adopted. There are things that work and things that have not worked. There are regional issues that needs to be taken into consideration. It's a whole world of finances, whole world of management. See, social entrepreneurship is not good intentions. It's a skilled activity. You need to be you need
Hmm.
to have the basic understanding of not just human resource management, but also networking, mobilizing funds, marketing. There are, you may not call it marketing, but at the end of the day, it's just that. So I think going and visiting different places and meeting different people gave me that understanding that things can be done in 5 different ways. And
Hmm.
I was lucky that I saw that, and then I kind of evolved my own eclectic way of doing it.
Yeah, and there
I
too,
was already doing something, so
right.
it just enriched me further.
Was it Sweden or one of those countries where San Francisco, was it, where demand reduction strategy, where they would counsel the sex buyers so that
Yeah.
they would mend their ways and stop, indulging, or rather stop doing buying sex. And that was something new to me when I read it. I had never thought of it, what happens on the other side. Is that something that can happen in a
Oh,
country like India? Is it? Yeah.
oh,
Mm.
it is happening in the country like India, and we are doing it. But at that time, for me, it was
Hmm.
one of the most novel experiences. Visiting San Francisco, and it's called as John School. In the United States, buyer is called as a John.
Ah.
So, and it's called the John School, and the whole philosophy behind the school was to apprehend buyer, counsel and provide him counseling, not just by a professional counselor, but also from their family members and things like that. And find him, and the whatever is the fine goes into the exit of that woman in whichever brothel she was in. I found the entire experience very, 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 very interesting. And then I went to Sweden after that, and then I saw firsthand what the Nordic model looks like, where there's a specific legislation which says that buyers can be arrested. The women are not touched. It's the
Hmm.
buyers who are touched, and they are the ones who bear the brunt of. It's a very strong and compelling, demand reduction strategy. And we here in India, we have, I would say, in Prajwala,
Hmm.
we have experimented that in Hyderabad with great results. But the unfortunate problem is the country as a whole does not want to buy it because it can become controversial.
Hmm.
You know, any man is touched, everybody is like, oh my God. So somehow we have not been able to scale it up beyond the boundaries of Hyderabad. But definitely, wherever we tried it, amazing results. Requires a little bit of
Hmm.
guts,
Yeah.
but if you can curtail the demand, automatically the supply will end.
But you were part of two. Please refresh my memory and help me out here. One was a documentary and another was a film that you managed to distribute. And then you got people calling you and saying that I used to be a sex buyer and the film has
Yes.
given me a new way of looking at things and I'm not doing it anymore. So that's a big, big win, isn't it? When your work
Uh,
goes out and people
yeah.
say, I have stopped doing that. So that is at
Oh,
least one
that
less
is
man is a big deal.
yeah, not one less man. There are thousands of less men now because that one film called as Na Bangaru Talli, it's playing on Disney Hotstar. So those of you who want to see that movie, please watch that movie. It's called as Na Bangaru Talli, My Dearest Daughter, which won four national awards and I'm sorry, three national awards and four state awards, and innumerable number of international awards for its film. That's a movie based on a true story, and what was very unique about the film is that different people saw different things in that film. And one of the most beautiful thing that happened in the film is the number of men who got transformed. One such young man had called us up in midnight after watching the film. He says, every Saturday he would go to buy sex to another town. And that particular night, he had come to take the bus to go to that town. He missed the bus, so he had to take the midnight bus. So he had around 3 hours to while away. So there was a theater just next to the bus station. So he went and saw this movie which was playing, and that was our movie. And he comes out and somehow traces and tracks Rajesh, my husband's number, and calls him. And she says, "I didn't know it pains. I didn't know that there were people before me, and I didn't know there are going to be people after me. Just never sunk into my brain." There's one small scene in that film. There's a very small piece scene where this girl is holding the leg of the brothel keeper and crying. She says, "Don't send me to another buyer. It's paining for me." And that particular, and that's just a 20 seconds snippet. And that 20-second changed the world vision of this young man. He says, it just didn't sink. I would just buy somebody. I never thought there was somebody before me and somebody after me. And I never thought what I'm doing to her pains her. Today, he is one of our greatest spokespersons for demand reduction strategies. And thousands of men thereafter have sent us messages and mails. So the power of the visual medium, if done with true honesty, is really, really powerful. We made a small short film, a documentary, and a feature film on demand reduction, and all of them had great results. All of them had great results.
And another one that had spectacular results, the visual medium, is your TED Talk, which at last count has over some 50 million views. And I've watched it, and the kind of delivery they teach us in corporate world about storytelling and how do you stand and talk. Were there any nerves before you went up there?
Everybody who's listening to this podcast, please read the book to know how nervous I was before the thing and how naive I was that I didn't know what was TED. I had no clue what it meant. I didn't know what that platform is. And I had absolutely clueless the kind of, you know, composition of human beings who are brought into that space, and to then go there and see that, and by God, whatever you know whatever I saw was so intimidating and so frightening that I lost all nerves in terms of even going up the stage. And in fact, few minutes before I went to the stage, I had to rush to the bathroom, and my stomach gave up on me, and so all kinds of things. And now you have the TED Talk there, 11 minutes and some seconds,
Yeah, you were
which
given an
got
18-minute deadline, but you
in less than 12 minutes. I finished and managed to get a very long standing ovation. It was, I still think it's one of the most bizarre things. And that's why perhaps, when people say success is about the right person at the right time and the right people, I think TED was just that for me. I was in the right place with the right time and
yeah.
with the right kind of audience. Yes.
It's a shame that they have on the website they've cut right after the standing ovation, I couldn't see what happens next, but you cover in the book something unusual happened that day, which has never happened in the history of TED.
So I think they cut off because they didn't want something like that to be repeated again. And that's not something that one would, even advise.
Hmm.
There was this me standing on the stage with folded hands in my perpetual namaste because I didn't know what to do because I had never got a standing ovation before that. And I was like, what does one do when somebody gives a standing ovation, which is not stopping? So I, to be on the safe side, just kept my hand. My namaste was there for a long time. And then as I finished this namaste, there's this woman, I think she's name is Rose Schumann, if I'm correct, from Italy. And she got
Hmm.
up and she said that I pledge $10,000. And if somebody can match, 10 people can match me. And in the next 3 minutes, 10 people matched it. And so in less than 5 minutes, I raised $100,000. It was very bizarre.
Wow.
And I remember the curator of the program coming up on the stage, and she knew a little about what was happening in our
Hmm.
organization. At that time, we were facing eviction. We were going through a really rough patch. And so while I was mindful that I will not speak about all of that in my speech, she kind of asked me what's happening. And so I said, this is what we are facing. We are being evicted.
Hmm.
And miracles and miracles followed after the TED talk. We needed around $1 million to complete the construction. In just less than 15 days, we managed to get that $1 million. And Google came forward without even one line of proposal or anything like
Hmm.
that. So I think, when you do things right, you do it with sincerity and you're devoted to what you're doing in its purity.
Hmm.
Even if there's little bit of corruption in your thinking, I don't think you would reach there. But if you can be that, the universe does conspire to make things happen for you. I've experienced that firsthand. I've experienced how the powers above you, around you, in you all gets aligned in one line. Whatever, I think Shah Rukh Khan has some dialogue like that, Sari kainat ma jati hai. Shiddat
Right.
se, if you love somebody. So
Yeah.
yeah, love has different emotions. Shiddat se, if you love the work or the
Hmm.
cause that you're doing in its purity,
And you
the
also had the
universe,
icing that John Grisham was among those who also contributed, and you say that you like his novels as well, so that
yeah,
also happened.
yeah. I mean, just imagine seeing a transfer from John Grisham, and I'm actually having his novel on my table. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You talked about John Grisham, and I liked again to pull your leg, if I may, about being human, coming off as as just any other human. As you do love movies, is what you write, and whenever
First
you
day
do
first
find
show.
times, yeah, first day first show, that I did
First
not
day
know.
first show used to be my norm till
Ah,
few years back. Before COVID, first day first show. The theater security guard knew which is my seat, and there are theaters in Hyderabad who would actually come and give me a cup of tea
wow, that's
wherever I'm
something.
sitting. So, I'm like customer of theirs and the most
Hmm.
loyal customer of theirs. I don't see any clash. So I
Right.
think after COVID, it's gone
Hmm.
into OTT.
Hmm.
One movie a week is a must for me,
So that's your
even
guilty
today.
pleasure, is it? What's your guilty pleasure,
Why
if I were to
guilty
ask you?
pleasure?
No, that's
No,
that's not the
no
one. Do you
guilty
have
pleasure.
any?
I don't have any guilty pleasure. I feel I've earned everything that I do. In
Absolutely
fact,
amazing.
you can now give me more. If I was deserving one diamond nose pin, you can
Hmm.
give me 10. I deserve it. That's it. So there's nothing guilty about it. No.
Excellent. And you know what? To the regular folks like us, right? We read about these things, rescue
Are you
operations,
are you
and
putting me in some irregular dabba of yours? Meaning
no,
I'm as
I
regular as you all, yeah?
no, that you are. That was very much on a lighter note, and you've gotten your hands dirty more than some of us. So you're more
Yeah.
regular than some of us who talk to you.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And we read about these things about rescue operation in this hotel, and there has been a raid here. That's all we know. But one thing that struck from your book was it's very important to prepare adequately the victim. You got to prepare her before you rescue her, which I thought was fascinating, that you need to tell her what's happening, and that they should perceive it as help and not landing from one place to the other because they are all confused. Help me understand, why is that important to prepare the victim before you rescue?
Important, but it doesn't happen, Abhishek. That's a reality of it. One ideally that is what should happen. That if you go for a rescue, the person rescued should know that help is coming the way, and and the help is trustworthy.
Right.
Unfortunately, very less can be done before, because when in captivity it's very difficult to connect with the person and prepare that there are trustworthy people coming to remove that person. Having said that, the other closest alternative to kind of bridge that kind of a gap is to ensure that people who understand the victim, who are coming from a trauma informed space, are part of the rescue mission. So right from the way word go, see, when policing happens and the police is dealing with the victim, they're trained in a particular way and they can only behave in a particular way. Now, suddenly expecting them to take some new avatar of counselor and all, not possible. And it's not done. Their job is not to become counselors.
Right.
Their job is to apprehend the criminal.
Hmm.
Their job is to establish the crime. Because while I have a job to do in terms of looking after the victim, they also have a lot of jobs to do. That they have to investigate the case, they have to prepare the charge sheet, they have to take it to the trial. So, at the place of the crime, the scene of the crime as we call it,
Yeah.
the policeman's job is not like becoming suddenly, the healer and the counselor and the all of that, or the wellness coach for that matter.
Yeah.
The person is supposed to now, who are the criminals, catch them, gather all the material evidences, seize all those materials that will connect it to the crime, you know. So this policeman, woman, whoever, is moving around for that. But who looks after the women? Victim. She is kind of completely zapped and she's out of her wits. Who's coming? Who's removing me? Where are they taking me?
Yeah.
And that is where, people from the civil society who are trained in trauma informed approaches become part of the team. Then they take care of the victim, and then they prepare the victim right from the word go. And when I say word go, is not word go before rescue. I wish it could be before rescue, but that doesn't happen
Right.
during the rescue to
During
say,
the
"Ki,
rescue.
listen, we are here for you." But I must say, it is quite impactful, yet it is not completely successful. Because we are reaching only from the point, because they have never looked at the police as somebody who are going to do good to them,
Yeah.
And now we have partners as police and we are walking with the police as, co-travelers, is also confusing the girl. So this gentleman actually took money from me last week. Now how is he saying that he's saving me? There's a lot of confusing images, you know, and we are navigating through all of that. So hostility during rescue and post rescue, no choice. That's the reality.
And the connection with the police is so important, right? Because they are the ones that who will do the work at the ground level, or the IPS officers, the ones who actually have the power to do certain things. And if you have someone who's good at his job, not corrupt, do you see those? Because usually IAS and IPS officers are clubbed saying yaar sabhi corrupt hote hain. But how was your experience of working with IPS officers?
That is one of the stupidest misconceptions that all of us have. We are all running to judge people here,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we all want to paint them in a black brush as quickly as किसी के साथ हुआ नहीं, so the entire department is bad. I learned the hard way that there are good people, there are bad people, and there are a lot of fence sitters who are neither here nor there. I've met officers like Mahesh Bhagwat, who's an IPS officer and a par excellence officer. He's actually a Maharashtrian and from the Telangana cadre, and what a gentleman, yeah, what a gentleman. The sensitivity, the empathy he carries, and from the word go, I say 20 years, association with him, not a single rescue that we've had where he has not followed it up till it has gone for trial. And there's so many girls who have just spoken to him once and transformed for life. There are girls who have told me कि हम लोग सोचते थे पुलिस वाले पूरे चोर हैं,
Hmm.
इन्हें देख के समझ आया नहीं. So there are officers like that. I would say many such officers. And I've been extremely blessed to meet several such officers across the country. And every state has it. So we have to believe in that. See, we have to believe in the good of the world, in the system and outside the system.
Yes.
The evil around us are very few, but the silence of the good
Hmm.
is a larger problem that each one of us face. Very important that the good of the world in the system, outside the system, stop being silent, and start articulating and I would say break their silence on violations and crimes, because somewhere we don't realize when the good choose to remain silent, the good choose to remain inactive and complacent. What we are doing is creating an enabling environment for the bad to thrive. So today, if the bad is thriving, it's also because of the good people who chose to remain silent inside the system and outside the system. I'm so glad for officers like Mahesh Bhagwat and the innumerable number of IAS and IPS officers, some of whom I have quoted in my book, who actually not only define the goodness inside the system, but these are people who chose not to be silent, chose to use their power and position in the right manner so that another human being's dignity is restored.
And these are those not to lose hope in people and not to paint them in the same brush is what your
Yeah.
advice is. Yeah. I'd love to go on for a while, Sunitha, but I have to respect your time. Thank you so very much for being so generous in offering me this time, and congratulations yet again. Just one final question. I am what I am, the reason for getting this name. If you could tell us
I am
why
what
you
I
chose
am.
this.
I am what I am.
Doesn't
I
require
think,
any explanation.
no, actually, when I started
Yeah.
writing the book, I had another title. I called it as Being a Survivor. And then a few friends of mine were visiting me, and then they all started, you're not just a survivor, you're a crusader, you're that, you're this, and all the rest of it. Said, there's a whole bunch of people out there who look at me as demon, and they will actually celebrate the day I leave this you know. And then there's another bunch of people who deify me and
Hmm.
idolize me, and that is also true, and this is also true. All of this is true, but end of the day, I am what I am, with all my finickiness, meanness, my goodness, my ugliness, my everything. I'm just me, and I just want to be just that.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Sunitha.
Hopefully, your podcast will end up with at least five more people buying this book and reading it.
Yes.
Guys, I have written this book so that you read it, not that I don't want it to be lying in some bookshelf somewhere, in some store. Please buy it and read it. I believe if you give it freely, nobody's going to read it. So please buy it and read it. And if my life lessons can be of some use to you, I'll be honored and humbled.
Thank you, Sunitha, for writing the book and the experiences with all the anecdotes going down to the ground level. Like I said at the start of the podcast, it's brilliant, and there are, you know, I have sat with the book by myself deliberately with no one around because it's I have had a what's that right phrase? You choke on occasions, and I didn't want anybody around when I'm with that book. So it has some of those moments, and some of it you make light of yourself, your self-deprecating humor on occasions where you pull your own leg. It's not a serious book
You
at all
didn't see
places.
the romance?
Yeah,
You
oh yeah,
didn't
that
notice
too.
a romance? My man, my
Yes.
Valentine, and my friend,
Yeah.
my partner, Rajesh, who's also a big part of the
Oh,
book.
you bet, absolutely. And you very clearly threw him under the bus about an hour ago. So I mean, yes, it's got everything. And thanks again. And before I let you go, Sunita, I need to ask you this. Tell me about the experience of you getting to know that you are among the list of people who will be honored with the Padma Shri, which is a big deal.
So
How did you get to know that?
I had no clue because I didn't know. I never applied for it, number one. I knew that nobody had nominated me that I knew of. Um, in 2016, I worked in more than 11 states,
Mm.
and I knew not a single state had nominated me. Uh, and how I know that is that if they nominate you, they'll make a lot of hangama around you. Oh, give your biodata, you give that,
Yeah.
you give this, and there's that. So nobody did all of that. So I had no clue anything at all, and I was in my hometown in Kerala, and we had our annual temple puja scheduled for 26th January, and it was 25th January, and I had just reached my uncle's place, and my father was on his way from Bangalore by train, and suddenly my my assistant calls me up and says, "Ma'am, somebody from the Ministry of Home Affairs is trying to contact you." And so it's kind of a real protocol here that nobody can give my number away to people. Not that the traffickers don't know my number, but still, there's a minimum, you know, security precautions that we take. So I said, okay, give in. After that, I got this number from a Delhi number 111, and this is a gentleman who said, Madam, आपको पद्मश्री दी. I am deaf for my 1 year, and I thought I became totally deaf. I didn't know whether I was hearing it right. And I said, gee, the network is not all right. Can you repeat it? Repeat it. And then he says, Madam, आपको पद्मश्री मिला है. Is it, are you okay? And do you give your consent? Yeah, and what would I say? And I just, yeah, yeah, thank you. And it took me
Mm.
minutes and minutes for that thing to sink in. And it didn't sink at all, I think, for days together, because suddenly, everything changed around me. My uncle was sitting right in front of me. He got zapped, and, we were in our little village. Nobody knows that kind of village. We call it a kugram. बहुत ही छोटा सा गांव.
Okay.
And suddenly the entire media lands up there, uh, Sunitha Krishnan, suddenly that my little village called as Tamarapadam became so famous.
Mm.
And the next day, I remember 26th January, when school students, NCC cadets, and all of them from all across that village, around that village, all the schools, they all came march fast to see the Padma Shri lady. Uh, It was such a it was such a full circle,
Mm.
because my parents, especially my father, went through so much of humiliation because of me. And for a good part of my life, I had given them only bad name. I had not given them anything that they could say with pride or great. You know, they silently stood by me, taking the humiliation and all those snide remarks from relatives, friends, and everybody about giving me too much of freedom and I'm going bonkers. An aunt of mine actually called me a prostitute. In that same place, my father became the center of attention, and everybody said, Krishnan Gutti's daughter has got Padma Shri. It is his village. It's the
Right.
village that he was born. So it's just a full circle that
Mm.
I reached there. I think that would be one of the most special moments in my life, because I had given my father a reason to be proud of me. Padma Shri gave that. Not that my father was happy after that, because after that he kept asking me, "Does this give you concession in train? Does this give you any extra privilege?" And I said, "Nothing, just a medal. That's all." And everybody will say Padma Shri awardee. That's it. Uh, No, police medal and all people get concession in their ticket, in railway ticket and all. I say, Daddy, no, nothing here. Extremely disappointed. In fact, if Mr. Modi is listening to your podcast, I would definitely urge him, kindly add some small concession for people like us in train ticket and all that, so that my father, bless his soul, will feel happy that at least some award has given us some benefit in life, you know. So
He
that used to be
spoke
my
like a
father's, yeah, my
yes,
father's
yes,
standard question. What is the benefit? You've not got money, you've not got anything, just a medal, no railway concession, no extra privilege, no nothing. Nothing. You know. So
and
yeah.
that day, the president, how was that to, on the day, were there any protocols? Did you have to rehearse for it, and
Oh
how
yes,
was it?
they for Padma Shri you're invited a day before.
Hmm.
You're a state guest. You're accommodated in the Ashoka
Yeah.
Hotel, and then they take you and show you how you have to receive the award. Where do you sit? How do you walk? And how do you go before the president? Where you need to look at to get your
Right.
photograph done? So the photographer is on your right side, so you have to look
Hmm.
that side. So yeah, it's a surreal kind of uh, and it changes you forever.
Right.
There is no
Right.
doubt about it. I don't think
Hmm.
any. I have
Hmm.
received hundreds of awards in my life. I think what that one award did in my life, I don't think any other awards did, because it kind of is the validation from the government that you
Right.
are doing it right. It's a recognition of your cause. And then, it's like 25th of January 2016, you are one person.
Yeah.
26th of January 2016, suddenly you have become somebody else. Now everybody listens to you. Now you get appointments so easily. Now nobody ignores you.
Hmm.
Now people are supposed to give you some protocol
Right.
and honor your presence in any gathering, you know.
Hmm.
Suddenly, it's till before 2016, from 96 to 2016, for 20 years, I had to struggle to be heard, fight to be heard, you know, push my way to be heard. After 2016, January 26th, I didn't have to do that. You
Hmm.
know, I just have to say I'm Sunitha Krishnan, Padma Shri awardee,
Right.
and people are compelled to hear. Good, bad, ugly. And if we can use it rightly for the cause, you know, uh, I think, and it also adds a lot of responsibility to you. And responsibility, power comes with a lot of
Hmm.
responsibility. And your responsibility is hundredfold, that you never misuse this validation, never misuse this recognition, and ensure that to the best of your ability, you're giving this platform that has been created for you by the government. You're using it for the mission and your cause. That's what Padma Shri is for me.
Excellent, but no concessions, which they need to fix.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's like your dad reminds me of that Maruti ad, "Kitna deti hai?" Because all of us
Uh,
are, you want everything. I mean, it needs to have a benefit at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
But I mean, on a serious note, that obviously would have changed everything and for the better. And you also write in your book that you would not like to go up there and get awards. You would rather have some startup of an NGO who's starting out get that kind of spotlight, because it's, how difficult or impossible for some,
In
at
fact,
times it is at the time.
Abhishek, many people
Hmm.
thought that I'm very condescending and I've got a lot of attitude and I'm very arrogant, because I would actually refuse an award, you know. Because especially after I got Padma Shri, I started saying no to awards. I said no, no.
Hmm.
Not because I felt that the award is anything less or anything that, was was something that was not up to my stature. Every award is a recognition and it's just taken with a lot of humility. But I felt, if that can be given to somebody who is starting their journey, the kind of support and this kind of backup it would mean, if that person gets that kind of encouragement, is going to be huge, and I rather have that, you know, at the expense of being misunderstood and misperceived by men.
But I am what I am, right? So,
Yes.
yes, thank you. Thank you yet again, Sunitha, for your time.
Yes. Thank you, Abhishek.